In today's video, we're going to go through a walkthrough editing a film scan. This was converted with Negative Lab Pro. I don't do much with Negative Lab. I adjust most of the photo in Photoshop. There's a lot more flexibility there. And in Negative Lab Pro, I'm mostly adjusting white balance and the lookup table for the colors. For this one, doing auto neutral. That one looks the cleanest. Auto warm is too much. Auto cool is too much. Sometimes auto average isn't too bad, but in this instance, it's a little bit washed out. Auto neutral looks the cleanest. Lookup table, sometimes I'll do none. This one I did natural. It kind of opened up the shadows a little bit, but kept a fair amount of contrast, and the white balance didn't change much. Sometimes I'll do frontier, but this is a cooler image. This was taken at dusk, and it seems like the frontier lookup table is a little bit on the warm side. So for this edit, because this was a cooler temperature, I stuck with the natural. Saturation is at 5. Adjusted the white clip and the black clip just a little bit, and then I do lab sharpening here, and then I leave these alone. Generally, I'm using lab standard. If for some reason the scan comes through and it's really contrasty, I'll do lab soft, but this scan came through pretty clean, so just leaving it at lab standard. So we'll click apply. I don't do much in Lightroom because the sliders are backwards. I know you can create a TIFF file copy in Lightroom, but it's just easier to not have to deal with that. So I just send these to Photoshop, plus you get a little bit more flexibility editing. So we'll send this to Photoshop, and we'll jump into Camera Raw filter, and jump to the curve panel, click on edit point curve. This just lets you adjust contrast. I'm gonna add a smidge here. Just a little bit, nothing crazy. There's before, there's after, just a little tiny bit just to get us started, and then adjust the RGB channels. Nothing too crazy. There is a tiny bit of red, not a lot, so this will just be a minor adjustment because we're gonna get into blues pretty quick on this one. Greens, there is a little bit of greens, but as we push or adjust the slider, introducing a lot of reds, so I'm just gonna use the keyboard to make small adjustments here. See, even on 4 and 5, we're introducing a little bit of reds. So I think I'll go with 3, kind of in the middle. Jump over to the blues. And that's introducing too much yellow. So just barely, maybe like 2. Let's see what we got. There's our before, there's our after. Just cleans things up a little bit. Contrast is a little heavy. I may back off of that. On this slider here, was it 8? I'm just gonna back off a little bit. I think that looks a little bit cleaner. We just set a black point, got rid of some of the color cast, clean things up a bit, looks good. So now we'll jump to the parametric curve. I like to start here just to make some finer adjustments. And I always start with the darks. I'm gonna push those up a smidge. I usually do that on digital and film photos. I'll push the darks up a little bit and then bring the shadows down. Get more blacks. The darks kind of are muddy if you crank those down. And if you drag down the shadows, you can go a lot further. I mean, we're on negative 84 there, and it doesn't look as bad as dragging the darks down to negative 82. So I will generally do that, push the darks up a little bit to bring out a little bit of shadow detail, and then bring down the shadows just to compensate and have a nice contrast without being too much. And then I'll come up and adjust the lights. Probably don't need to do a lot of that here. Just a little bit, just to make things pop. And highlights, just a little bit. So let's see what we've got going on here. Nothing major, but it just makes the car pop a little bit more. Jump up to the basic tab. I don't think I'll do anything with the white balance. That doesn't really need to be adjusted. We kind of fixed that when we were making the adjustments in the curves panel and the RGBs. So I'll leave those alone. Tint, leave alone. Exposure, I don't think that needs to be adjusted really. If anything, bring it down just a touch since this was a nighttime picture. If you push the control key and then hit the down arrow, that gives you a little bit smaller increments to work with. So we'll just do a tiny reduction in exposure, add some contrast. Bump up the highlights just a little. Whoa, didn't want to do that. Push up the shadows just a bit. Push up the whites, bring down the blacks, add 3 on texture. That's just a standard that I do on most pictures. 2 on clarity, and push up dehaze. That one's kind of where you like it. Not too much difference between 2 and 3, but it just kind of solidifies the dark areas of the image, just makes them pop a little bit. So there's where we started. There's where we're at. Nothing too crazy. Just cleans things up just a little bit. Jump down to detail. Foresharpening. I know we added some in Negative Lab Pro. I add a little bit more here. I'm doing such a minimal amount, it doesn't really make too much difference. You know, it's not over sharpened. So I add 15. That's just a number that works well for me. And I come down to detail. Bump that to 20. I've done this enough times on edits that I don't even have to look at the screen. That's just a standard that I do. Just cleans things up a little bit. It's probably pretty minimal. Ooh, I forgot. Missed focus on this one. And I wonder if I bump the camera a little bit. Almost looks like there's a little bit of movement. That's so weird. The McLaren logo is out of focus, but the headlights right behind it look pretty sharp. That's odd. Anyway, if we look at the toggle visibility, probably won't even be able to see the difference in sharpening. It's so minimal. There's a slight bump, but I don't like to over sharpen. I just add a little bit, call it a day. So done with that. Color mixer. Probably won't do much here. We'll just kind of run through these sliders and see what we have going on here. May add or remove a little bit of luminance in the reds. Just add a little bit more shadowed area here on the hood. This should mostly affect the paint on the car. I think I'll push this up just a little bit. Yellows will probably affect the paint. Well, actually, surprisingly not. Mostly just the film borders. Bring that up just to let the text on the film borders pop a little bit better. Greens, not too much going on there, so we'll leave that alone. Not too much in the blues, that's just mostly affecting the highlights, so we'll leave that alone. Blues. Maybe just a tiny bump. Purples. Mostly reflections, maybe a small bump there. And magentas, kind of that shadow area. I'm just going to leave that alone. We'll do a before and after view here. So this is with the edits. This is without the edits. My editing style is pretty minimal. I don't like to go super crazy. I just like to bring the focus on the subject. And I think we did a good job in this edit with that. Went from a little bit of a flat image to a nice clean edit. The focus is definitely on the McLaren. I mean, it still is here, but it just makes the car pop a little bit more. At this point, we'll close camera raw, and this is where I would dust the photo. If you'd like to see a more detailed video on how I dust film scans, I'll leave a link in the description. That's just a quick run through on how I edit film photos in Negative Lab Pro and Photoshop. That's it for this video.